Alrighty then, we will get started with our first year panel. Hopefully we'll have a couple more people trickle in as we go, but I do want to be mindful of everybody's time. So hello everyone, welcome to our first year student panel. We are very excited and very happy for all of you to join us today. Again, a couple of housekeeping reminders. This session is being recorded, so if you do not want your video or your camera or anything to be shown, please turn off your cameras and please make sure to stay muted throughout the entire session. We will have an opportunity for you all to ask any follow-up questions at the end of the session if time permits. So first up, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. So again, my name is Kimberly Rodriguez Jimenez. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am the CASP office manager, and I will be one of your moderators for today's first year student panel. And right now I will head it on over to Jay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay Wilson. I go by he, him, his. I am part of Muir College. I'm majoring in sociology, and as well as being a CASP Summer 101 intern, I was a CASP OLC leader person. So next up, I'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start off with Bree.
Hi everyone, my name is Brienneth. I usually go by Bree. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a Marshall College student. I am double majoring in political science and education studies, and I am this year's CASP 101 student supervisor.
All right, folks, give it up for Bree. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Jinyi.
Hi everyone, I'm Jinyi. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm in Muir College. I'm a general biology major, and I'm a CASP peer leader.
All right, thank you, Jinyi, for joining us. And finally, we have Katie.
Hello, everyone. My name's Katie. I recently graduated this spring. I majored in human developmental sciences. My college was Marshall College, and I'm a student supervisor as well.
All right, thank you so much, all of our panelists. And without further ado, we will get right into the show. So the first question we have for you three is, can you start by sharing a memorable experience you've had at UC San Diego? And there's no particular order. You can answer however you wish.
I can go ahead and get started. So aside from meeting tons of amazing people at UCSD, I think one of my most memorable experiences, like specific experiences, was one of the events hosted by Revelle College. As y'all know, every college, like their like students host different events around like finals week. So one of the events that they always do is the petting zoo event. So they had a bunch of different animals. They gave out sprinkles, cupcakes, and they had like trampolines. So it was really awesome to be able to just go with my friends and kind of forget about the stress of finals.
I can go second. So the thing about UCSD is that it's by a beach, and so my story is going to take place somewhere called the Cliffs, which overlooks like the ocean. This was after my finals, actually, my first quarter at UCSD. I don't remember what went on besides being in Muir, and then some boys were watching K-dramas, and I was in my friend's dorm. And then we were also cooking a cheese sandwich. And up until midnight, one of them said, there's a meteor shower at 1 a.m., let's go. And then someone else said, yeah, let's go. And like, to me, I thought it was sarcastic. Like 2/3 of us thought it was a sarcastic remark. And then someone says, wait, are we actually going? So we spontaneously ended up going to the Cliffs, which again oversees the ocean. And we ended up stargazing. And we were enjoying a meteor shower at 1 a.m. And I think it was a really good time to really relax after finals and also create some memories with the new friends I've made on campus.
I think some of my favorite memories that I've had at UCSD kind of revolve around just little events that sometimes you'll find throughout campus. So sometimes you'll be walking through classes and different clubs and stuff, or hosting different things. So I remember sometimes I would have really big gaps between certain classes of mine. So like sometimes like 2-3 hour gaps. And I'd always find some kind of activity like a long library walk or just around like PC area. So it was always fun to kind of just stop, and everything's usually kind of free. Just it's more to like build community. So that was always nice to kind of just get to like meet people. But kind of on that note too, I think like my like number one thing would always be like the Sun God Festival. Just the events put on by like your student body. Those are really pretty cool. They bring a lot of food vendors and just activities for y'all to do, and it's part of your UCSD experience. I think that's always great to just do them because they're there, and then after you leave college, like you won't have things like that, so you might as well just go and try it all out and see if you like it.
Thank you all so much for sharing. Our next question for you all is, could you tell us what the big difference between high school and UC San Diego was for you all as an incoming first year?
I think for me, it was just adapting and kind of understanding that in high school, like everyone that's going to, like, for example, UCSD, you tend to be at the top of your class. And it was kind of getting in that mindset and knowing that you're competing with people, like everyone at UCSD is just as smart as you or even smarter. So it was that. And then just kind of understanding that I have to do everything for myself and not for anyone else. I think high school is very much for, I was doing things for my family, for my friends, not very much for myself. So going to UCSD, which is a predominantly STEM college, I tend to question my major a lot. Being a political science and education studies major, I tended to kind of question if I really wanted, to go into politics or to go into teaching. And at one point I was like, maybe I can do public health. It's more like closer to like health. I wanted to like switch up my major, but just understanding that I chose to go to college and it was for myself and for nobody else.
I think another difference between high school and college, any college really, is the academic setting in terms of tests and exams. I remember one of the things that stuck out to me my first year was that I was taking this math course called 20C, which is differential equations for math for engineers and chemistry majors. And the average was of 30 to 40%, which is quite low compared to high school. And in high school, I was the type to really like swing by classes. I didn't really need like extra help just because the classes between high school and college are, the difficulty level is pretty drastic. And I find myself to form study groups and go to a bunch of resources that just
I think Yini may have had some technical difficulties. Hopefully we're able to log her back in. Jay, did you want to maybe answer this question as well?
Sure, surprise y'all, I am also a panelist now. So for me, I think the biggest difference was the social aspect. So in my particular experience, when I went from middle to high school, I came with a large group of friends because we're all in the same like district and most of the middle schools transferred to the same high school. So I had a pretty good social connection already when I went from one grade level to the next. That was not so when I went from high school to college because you're going from your city boundaries to obviously international boundaries. So I think the biggest difference was just having to put myself out there more. I haven't really had to express myself as openly as I have my first year of college compared to all my other experiences. And it definitely opened my eyes because I could try and I guess that was one of the benefits of being an anonymous, or like one of the many, is you effectively can start a clean slate. So when I came into my first year, I tried just about everything and anything in terms of groups, social clubs, academic clubs, just to see what I fit into best. And eventually I found a rhythm, and I fell in love with everything I did. So that's probably the biggest difference, is just the social connections and the networking you might have to do in college. It's a lot more not fulfilling, self-propagated, I suppose, for lack of a better term. So yeah. And then I believe Katie.
Yeah, kind of along those lines too. I think the social environment and for sure the academics were very distinct, but I think one of the things that really stood out for me was definitely the quarter system. Learning to kind of navigate how you would go into like week 2 or week 3 of your class, and like you'd start having midterms, just how fast paced that was. Sometimes I think that threw me off, especially like coming in as a STEM major and just kind of having to take like the bio and chem and calculus classes. I think that is what definitely just threw me off, because I was just so used to like being on top of everything. And even though I felt like I was on top of everything, I guess like grade wise, it didn't feel like it was always being reflected. So just learning to kind of adjusting to this new environment and adjusting to the fact that like most of your classes are very big. You'll have like 300 students in your lower divs. So just kind of learning to really advocate for yourself and learning to communicate, either like finding friends and peers and community, or just reaching out to your TAs or professors. I think that was like the one thing. I was just so used to, like in high school, I guess teachers reaching out to me, and like if I would fall behind or something was up, they'd be there to like kind of point it out. And then I realized in college, like besides the fact that like, yes, you're more independent, it's just also the big size in classrooms really, I think, puts you sometimes in a position that's like distant unless you go out and actually try to like find peers that can help you out and like build that community.
All right, thank you so much everyone for answering. Jeannie is still experiencing some technical difficulties, so she will be joining us at a later time. So following the next question, can you share what is one of the struggles you faced during your first year?
I think for me, it was learning how to manage my time. I started working for a program called the Early Academic Outreach Program. Actually before I even moved into to my dorm for my freshman year. So as soon as I was trying to figure out my classes, I was also working. So that transition was really hard for me because I wanted to give my best, to work and also to school. So I kind of was struggling with money. So I just gave my all to work, and I wasn't prioritizing my academics. So at one point I needed kind of a reality check and seeing my grades. I know like my classes were really, really easy my first quarter, and I know like I think I got like a C and like a B, and I know those were classes that I very easily could have gotten A's in. So it was kind of realizing that my best was good enough, but also like holding myself accountable and realizing that I did not do my best. And so yeah, just kind of that helped me go into second quarter of my freshman year with a little bit of a different mindset and knowing that my academics came first before anything else.
For me, I think my first year, what was really difficult, I struggled a lot with my self-confidence. Most of it had to do with like academics and kind of the social life. I think I came in with this mindset from high school where I really tied my identity to my grades. So just struggling my first year, especially like my first quarter, and not getting like the straight A's that I was used to getting, really put me in a position where I just didn't know who I was. I kept trying to validate myself through what I was producing, and that wasn't always the healthiest thing to do. So I did find myself sometimes like isolating myself from friends, not really like reaching out, because I was like, no, I'm too embarrassed. I don't want to like share that I'm struggling. I don't want anyone to know that like it's not going as great as I thought it would go. But I later learned on that like your peers will go through the same things, and even though like sometimes you don't talk about it, it's mostly like that's what's going through their mind too. Like they're thinking that you're okay, so then no one talks about it. But it really does help to kind of just reach out to people and be like, hey, like, do you ever feel this, or do you ever like, are you going through this too? Because I think that's what really just got me through like all 4 years of college, like having talks with like my friends back home and just the peers that I've also made at UCSD, and just being raw and real and saying like, yeah, sometimes like I am stressed. Sometimes I do recognize that my self-care could also not be where it should be. Because you will hit moments where you are struggling and not everything might feel like it's okay, but that is okay. It's part of your college experience. But just knowing that you have help and you have resources, especially like y'all are all CASP students, reach out to the pro staff, reach out to your mentors. Initiate conversations, because even if you don't know what resources that you should be using, usually we'll be more than welcome to redirect you to a source.
Okay.
Oh, is it Ginny is back in the call?
Yes. She's back in
Yeah,
the-
sorry. My connection was pretty bad. I guess the struggle I faced was that I was in a major that I didn't enjoy. So I was in the chemistry department, and I was pretty stressed because there's some majors that are capped, meaning that you have to complete some prerequisites with grades that are decent, especially to the engineering department. So I was in a rush to kind of complete those prerequisites, and because it's capped, I don't know if I would get into the major I would like. So I was pretty stressed about that, but eventually everything worked out. So I would say if you think that you would like to switch into another major, don't be afraid to change, career paths. College is all about discovering what you like and just discovering your passions. So I would look into that and also prepare for the actual major that you would like to switch into.
Yay. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing. Our next question for you all is, how are you able to or not able to find community at UC San Diego, because it's a huge institution, and what was the impact that had at your time at UC San Diego?
I always like to say I was very lucky, very blessed to have found my community and my support system in my apartment at UCSD. So it was 7 of us living in the upper apartments in Marshall. And to this day, I found my 2 absolute best friends there. We all got along. We were a huge support system for each other. At one point, everyone was stressed on any given day. So whenever we were stressed, someone would cook. We would just designate someone to cook for each other. Someone would bake something to make each other feel better. For the writing program for doc, we bought one book for everyone in the apartment and we all shared it. So that was really nice. We would all go to events on campus. Like I said, the petting zoo, we would all be we would have a group chat and we would just tell each other there's this event going on, let's all meet up, and we would all go after class. Even bonding with my RA was a huge thing. We happened to have an amazing RA who would always come in and talk to us and just give us all these resources, all this advice. We happened to go to Mexico City around the same time, so we both met up over there together and hung out. Yeah, so you'll find community when you least expect it, but you kind of have to be open to finding it.
I think I'll butt in really quick. Just to continue on from my previous experience of trying everything and anything. For an example in your head, imagine a dartboard. I had 100 darts and I threw all of them at the board. Some missed, some hit the bullseye, and that was kind of my way of finding my community. It's very much a brute force way, but it did work in my case. I found two communities that I love, event planning and the Mir community, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. You meet so many unique individuals, obviously through college, but just like-minded individuals that will support you and prop you up throughout your entire adventure. And it's just really nice to be able to lean back on someone every once in a while and, you know, just have event session and just talk it out rather than always having to feel pressured to perform. You can just be yourself around these individuals that you've grown accustomed to. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jay. I think for me, it took me a while to kind of establish my community. I did Summer Bridge as well. And that was my main source of my community. That's like those peers that I entered during the summer before my UCSD experience. There were like for sure like my foundation. But even throughout like the actual school year, I feel like because we're all different majors and we're just different colleges, I wouldn't always see them. So I was still missing like a community that I could kind of relate to like in my major or like relate to with like my GEs. So I think just how Jay said, it takes a lot of kind of trial and error because I would try to go out and like find clubs that I was maybe like interested in, but it wouldn't always like hit home. It wouldn't always just like feel right. And I did meet like a lot of great people. It just like it wasn't something that were like I found myself like, oh, I'm motivated to attend this meeting. So things like that sometimes I would like steer away. I'd be like, okay, yeah, like if I'm not interested in making the time for it because I was already like stressed about school or like if I was working, I would try to kind of just get engaged through something else and just find something else. But I think like what kind of did it for me was work. So just getting involved, like I got a campus job and my community kind of just fell in place through that. And even through that, like I met people that were also involved. So just when you start realizing like you find little spaces, like you also just get involved through other people because other people will just start kind of like telling you like, oh, well, I'm in this club or like I'm doing this, like you should join me. And I think once you kind of start finding like common things with other individuals, like you're also like a little bit, sometimes a little scary, a little less scarier to like try new things, right? So I think just really, like Jay said, just if you find something that you like don't like, it's okay to kind of just move on and try something else. There's definitely like different ways that you can get involved in campus, and I definitely do recommend it because it does feel big sometimes. And I definitely do think, like I said, you need to reach out to your peers because you'll find that you're not by yourself. Like whatever it is that you're feeling, usually like other students can relate. You just have to like be okay to talk about it and be okay to like make yourself vulnerable sometimes.
I think for me, aside from joining organizations where I might find someone with a common interest, is attending office hours and any study groups that is part of UCSD's resources. Because like for me, some lower division requirements actually, some people tend to take the same classes throughout the school year. For example, there's organic chemistry 1, 2, and 3. So for me, I've met my closest friends in office hours. We've struggled together, and through study groups, we kind of bonded. Like we don't study 24/7. We actually we form inside jokes, and we connected through, again, being vulnerable to each other. And I feel like the best way to find a close group of friends or to build community is really be the first one to reach out and say hello. I know some people might think that it's weird, but there's a lot of apps nowadays like Snapchat where you get to like quickly add one another and start talking. So that really worked out for me.
And then I suppose to follow up with that question for you all, given that a lot of our students that are currently joining us today will be going into UCSD in this new virtual remote environment, Could you maybe like explain like how some of the communities that you were a part of or identified with have been able to keep connected virtually or remotely? And I guess in addition to that, like what are some resources that have been really helpful for you all in this transition to this virtual remote learning experience?
I think during like our Zoom meetings, like on the chat, one thing we would all do, especially like the classes, like upper division classes or classes that were a little bit more challenging, we would all kind of like exchange like social media and like, or like each other's numbers and like kind of remind each other like, hey, this is due tonight, like don't forget to do it, like that type of thing. But especially once you start getting into like your upper division classes, you do start seeing the same people like over and over and over again. So it's kind of hard to not get to know them. So I think for me personally, it was a little bit easier. But again, we always have that option of just like maybe like getting everyone's emails and just sending like a mass email or creating like a Google Doc where y'all share your like notes or like sharing your number, like that type of thing.
For me, I think something that I've heard before and during the online world that we're living in is GBM. You will hear that term many times probably. It stands for General Body Meeting. And basically a lot of different organizations across campus will use that terminology whenever they're holding meetings that are open to everyone. So social media does play a very pivotal role, I will say, in the spreading of information and resources. Things like Facebook, Instagram. I don't use Twitter that much, I can't speak for it, but Facebook in particular is a social media site that is used heavily by UCSD students, as well as their organizations where they promote themselves. They're able to show you what they're about, what events they're hosting, their Zoom meeting links, all types of things. So if you're interested in finding a community through the digital format, I'd heavily implore you to at least peruse Facebook and check out the different UCSD organizations listed there.
Yeah, I think the Facebook groups is a big one. I believe y'all have like your class of group chat. So like students will sometimes like go and they'll post things like, oh, I'm taking this class, or like, does anyone need like a study buddy? And I think that's what kind of got me through the virtual quarter. Some of like, because I was taking a lot of like most of my upper divs. So yes, my classes were smaller. So I also knew some of my peers in the class. Like I had seen them before. I had taken classes with them. But I did take like one lower div, and that one, like, it was different in the sense of like, well, it was a bigger class. It was a bigger class size. So we didn't know each other. Like I didn't know anyone in that class. And that one, like I ended up doing like, well, I didn't do it, but someone in the group, in the discussion board, they were like, hey, like, let's start a group me. And that kind of really like made me survive the class, because they would do like Zoom, like they would send Zoom links, and they'd be like, let's study together like on Zoom and like have sessions. And sometimes we would like exchange also like study guides. Sometimes like we'd be like, okay, like let's go and like let's create an outline, or let's pile up like the information that we've learned, and like let's quiz each other. So that was very helpful. So just knowing that like y'all can still use like the virtual space of Zoom to also just kind of have study sessions, or also just run ideas by your friends. I think also sometimes like I would find myself having like Zoom calls just to like have my friends in front of me just do work, like even if we weren't necessarily like talking like the whole entire call. It was just us like watching each other, so we knew that we were working. Because sometimes like, because I'm home, so I would get just so distracted by like everything going on at home, and just the fact that I was home made me lazy. Like I was like, I'm not at school, like it's not that same environment, so my mindset was different. So it was just hard to kind of try to get myself to adjust to the idea that like, yes, I'm still in school, yes, I'm still taking classes, and I have all these things to do. So just trying to find people in your classes, and kind of like how my other other panelists have said, oh, I lost my train of thought. But just like being able to kind of, say hello first. Just be the first person to reach out and say hello. Because most of the times, like, that's how you'll find your friends. Like, you being the first person to say, like, hey, like, I'm in this class. Like, do you think, like, you want to, like, study? Or, like, do you think you want to, like, go through and just, like, keep each other updated or hold each other accountable? That always helps.
Going off of what Brenna has said in the chat, the Free and for Sale page on Facebook is a huge help. A lot of students will say, like, does anyone have the book for, like, so-and-so, whatever professor, whatever class, and everyone will, like, share it. Sometimes they even share, like, a PDF or, like, the link. And I know there's, like, an Excel sheet with a bunch of PDF versions of all the textbooks. So just taking a look at that. Like she said, you can get your iClickers there. A lot of professors ask for an iClicker. And if you go to the bookstore, like, they're like $60, and a lot of people are selling it for like $10 to $20. So that's a good option too.
Alrighty then. Just to make sure anyone else. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for answering that. So the next question is, what or who has helped guide your journey at UC San Diego?
I think for me, I relied heavily on a lot of my teachers in high school. So just having everyone, like, remind me, like, this is what you have to do. Like, I always just expected to be told what to do. So when I got into college, like, not having anyone tell me what to do was a little bit hard. But once I started getting closer to a lot of my professors, just going to office hours, going to just after class, going to talk to them was a huge help. Specifically, the writing sequence for Marshall, the dog Dimensions of Culture, that whole department was incredibly helpful for me. I remember just going to, like, talk to my professors, and, like, all of them were incredibly helpful, like, in whatever resources it is that I needed. Whether it was for work, if I needed anything for work, they would always help me. Like, just even if you need someone to talk to, like, they're a great resource. I know one of my professors, one of my favorite professors, Professor Alvarez for Chicano Studies, he would always hold his lectures at the Raza Resource Center. So just being there in that environment, it was kind of a very safe place to be. So I always found students that were there studying after class, and I would just go in and, like, talk to him. It doesn't have to be about academics or about the class. It could just be about anything that you're interested about, and just go in there and, like, talk to them. And like I said, just networking with people I know, not necessarily my friends, but, like, friends of my friends that I would just go in and, like, talk to, or they would come to my apartment, or we would hang out. Just getting to know people and, like, not being afraid of, talking to them and reaching out and asking for help.
For me, it was Oasis. So like I had mentioned, I started my journey, like, through Summer Bridge. So kind of similar to y'all, I had a mentor for my first year. So just, like, just having, like, that person to, like, check in, or just having someone to just ask, like, questions that maybe at the time felt like dumb, in the sense of, like, I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, no one's ever gone to college before me. But just having, like, knowing that I had someone that I could just, like, shoot a text and be like, hey, like, well, I'm lost. Like, where do you go on campus to do this? That's what really, I just really set my foundation. I also just really got involved with, well, like, it was part of, like, our requirements too for, like, the Summer Bridge program, but I do still, like, recommend them. Their workshops were always very helpful. They got me through, like chem and math. And they also have, like, that was another way that I built community as well, because you have to, like, they're mandatory, you have to attend them like twice a week, and you're with the same people. So it was, like, a smaller group. Out of, like, my lecture was like 300 students, I was with only, like, maybe 20, 15. So that's how I really learned to kind of like see familiar faces throughout my big lectures. And that was always less nerve-wracking whenever I would walk in the room, and I just to see those faces, I'm like, okay, like I'm not the only one here. But yeah, so just getting involved, I think, kind of how we just mentioned before, I think that that's just setting your community, and then just knowing that you have people that you can go through. And y'all, like your CASP family, like it's like y'all are lucky. Like it really is a family. So I think just learning to like take advantage of that, and learning to like not being afraid to use your resources, I think that'll definitely give y'all a good advantage.
And as for me, who has helped guide my journey at UC San Diego? I started at week 0, I was part of a neuroscience research lab, and so I think the people that has helped guide me is my research mentor, who's my PI, and then this upperclassman at that time, and then a couple other professional mentors who are MDs. I feel like going into research, and especially being the youngest in my lab, it really scared me. But it also motivated me to get to know these professionals and upperclassmen. And they were the ones who actually still are guiding me, whether it's my journey at UCSD or Career Rise. Because like I remember asking the upperclassmen about which classes to take, and just really venting all my like academic stresses, which really helped. She's great. And to my research mentors and MDs, they equipped me with work ethic and advice about careers, and they were just always there for any type of advice. And an advice that they shared that still stuck with me is that failure is part of success. I have a really hard time dealing with failure, especially in an academic setting. College is hard. It's another animal when compared to high school. So they really entrenched the idea that you need to try in order to fail, but you can't fail unless you try. So I know it sounds weird, but yeah, that's what they said. I think it is true though. Failure is part of success, and you will learn to grow from any obstacles in your way.
Thank you so much, everyone. And then for our final question, before we wrap everything up, if you could give just one quick piece of advice if you could have given it to yourself as a first year, what would it have been?
So I think for me, it's not to be so hard on yourself and not to compare yourself to anyone. Imposter syndrome is real in college. You will feel like what you're doing is not good enough, but it's important to be aware of your advantages and disadvantages and just do your best and realize that it's good enough. But with that being said, it's also important to hold yourself accountable and know that if you get a bad grade, like it's on you, but if you did your best and you still didn't pass a class or you didn't get the grade that you expected, that's okay, as long as you do your best.
Yeah, I think similar to that, I think I would have told myself to just be patient with myself and not be so hard on myself as well. I think definitely, like I had mentioned, just learning to not tie my identity to my grades, because like my grades don't represent my self-worth. I think that would have most definitely just been the like most helpful piece. And I did hear a lot, like my TAs would tell me, but just learning, I guess, to kind of just take things slowly and being patient.
And I believe Katie got cut off. Curse you, Wi-Fi. But we'll hopefully have her log back in and then type out her last piece of advice. And then Yinyi, would you like to add anything?
Oh yeah, sure. I think a piece of advice I would say, it's easier said than done, but it's one word: chill. It's, you know, an advice that an actual CASP student would usually say to me whenever I'm freaking out about like the tiniest thing. But yeah, to reiterate what I said, there are going to be a lot of obstacles in your way, especially if you're on campus or remote. But you will learn how to dance in the rain if there's ever a storm in the way.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for joining us. Virtual round of applause for all of them. They will be providing their contact information in the group chat. So if there's anybody you would like to get in contact with, or you'd like to touch base with, or hear more about their experience, feel free to reach out to them. They'll provide their contact information in the chat below. Before you log out and you go to your group buys before the program ends, if you could type into the chat what is in one word, describe how do you feel about starting your first year at UC San Diego. And then after that, you can feel free to log out, join your summer interns for your final group activities, your group buys. And other than that, thank you all so much for being part of this panel. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists and our moderator, Jay, that had to leave a little early. And other than that, we will leave y'all to it.
And I think this is the last time we'll see everyone until the fall quarter.
Yes.
So
But don't
enjoy your
be
group bye. We hope to see you around.
Bye. Maybe we'll see you for CASP chats tomorrow. Hopefully we will.
Yes.
Don't
Please,
forget, you can still register.
yes. Come to our CASP chats. Talk to great resources.
Yes, please continue to drop your responses. How are you feeling about fall quarter? Excited. Yes, Precious, we're excited.
Remember, the responses are also one of the ways we'll track attendance.
Oh, let me. Oh, I see some.
Oh, they're coming in. They're coming in.
I don't know how we're gonna. I had two students, I think, accidentally privately message me how they were feeling. Okay. So maybe we can. I just dropped their names and then that was their response. So I guess we could go through and figure it out.
Yeah. Or we can all just save our chat. Let's
Yeah.
just all save our chat.
That's okay, Seti.
Yay. So many of them are excited and nervous. Very valid.
Mm-hmm.
Did you unmute me, Jason? Yeah.
Yeah, I unmute all the participants.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we can stop the recording too.
Elijah, did you have a question? I saw that you unmuted.